TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Farms Breed Secure program. It's not too late to breed secure in 2015. Call Spendthrift today to book your late season mare.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have a lot to talk about. We have to recap the Derby. We got Preakness probables, and we got a Belmont prep that we need to talk about. Let's talk about the Kentucky Derby first. You know, we all said that this Kentucky Derby was going to be special. You know, all the favorites came into the race really looking good. Tell me, what were your impressions of the race?
And I think everybody got to run their race too, John. You know, we'll talk about a couple of the horses that, you know, were finishing at the end that, you know, may have had excuses in the race. But for the most part, you know, one thing I liked is everybody got to run their race. However, based on the way the pace was, it certainly there were some horses that were at a disadvantage. There were some horses that didn't break well, and I think there were others that didn't handle the racetrack. But there are only a couple of the key contenders that did not run their race. Now, one of them happened to be our number one, Carpe Diem. Let's go right now to the race replay, and we'll see the greatest 2 minutes in sports as we kind of talk about this race right from the gate here, John. This is where you can lose the Kentucky Derby, and this is where I think Materiality lost it. He comes out of the gate slow, immediately gets shuffled back. He's a tactical horse here, and he has nowhere to go. I mean, he is bound at that point in what he can do. So basically, Javier has to take him way back out of it. He loses way too much ground here based on the pace scenario that breaks out in front of him. You see the traffic trouble here. You got Mr. Z, Bolo, Danzig Moon, all bouncing around in there. It's a knockout, got shuffled back and bounced around pretty good. And you take a look up now as they hit the first turn and go on to the backstretch. And when they threw that 47 and change up, and you saw Dortmund on the lead, a horse that I didn't think would make the lead, maybe if you saw Stanford in the race, maybe if Ocho had have gone from the rail, but they took back with Ocho. You look up, Dortmund's on the lead here, Firing Line's cruising right off his flank, and you have in the three-path American Pharaoh in a good rhythm there, and even Carpe Diem has a good spot here. He's just not traveling well. At that point, in my opinion, you basically knew the race was over. That's four quality colts on the front end going at a leisurely pace, and basically the back dozen in here were really up against it at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was really interesting. You see Carpe Diem there when that traffic trouble, you know, he was traveling pretty well, but he got banged around. By the time I saw him, I was on that first turn. He looked like he was already kind of out of rhythm, and he wasn't really traveling as well as American Pharaoh was in the first turn.
Well, they're asking him, Johnny's asking him to keep up here, and he's not running the turn well. He re-engages here. I mean, you see Ocho goes by him. He re-engages and passes Ocho in the stretch, but like the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he does not run the turn well. Maybe a sign they just didn't handle this track similar to Santa Anita. But turning for home here, you see Dortmund here on the lead, John. I'm not sure the inside was the best part of the racetrack. I mean, you see Dortmund, he's fighting along here, but just my assessment of watching the last few races on the day, it was good early on the card. Not so sure that's where you wanted to be here in the Derby. And you saw the best horse. He lost a lot of ground because they knew he was on the best horse. They had him wide, and you saw Firing Line come to him at the top of the stretch. Gary Stevens wanted him to go to the favorite. And what's interesting with Firing Line, John, as you see him cross the wire here, here's again the colt that we talked about that we were sort of discouraged by his low salfuturity, lack of seasoning, having that in-between trip, you know, not finishing to try to win the race. Same thing in the Bob Lewis when he made the lead easily over Dortmund came back to nail him on the wire. And then you give him 6 weeks off and only run in one prep 6 weeks up to the Derby. I think we saw some lack of seasoning there again from Firing Line. He ran a great race, but to me he was on his wrong lead. He lost focus in there, and he got beat by a very good horse in there who obviously did all the right things, was on his right lead, was focused, ran a great race, got a 105 Beyer speed figure in here. So question marks now as we go into the Preakness. Dortmund, was he on the best part of the racetrack? You know, because look, he got it his own way, and that was not a Dortmund-like performance. I mean, he didn't finish quite as well as he had been, in my opinion. Firing Line mentioned him, and then obviously American Pharaoh, who, you know, definitely was all out to win in there. He lost a lot of ground, John, on the turns. He definitely ran further than the other two horses, but he proves best at the end.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, like you said, to see these horses now come back for the Preakness. The top three finishers, they're already saying, look, we're good, we're headed to the Preakness. Yeah. But you got a couple horses that are still on the fence, including Carpe Diem. You know, we talked with Elliott Walden. He said they're still, you know, up in the air. They're undecided. The colt is back at Belmont with Materiality and also Competitive Edge, a horse that ran an undercard race, very impressive. So they're going to take those horses and start training them again, later this week, and then they'll make their decision. But Joel, the Preakness could be just as good as the Derby was.
It could be better. And I really have always believed that the Preakness is the most truly run Triple Crown race because you get a legit size field. You're not going to get more than 14 in there. So it's a normal gate, John. Nobody's compromised, essentially. I mean, materiality, if he misses the break there, he still has room to get into a good spot. I mean, you saw Frosted in there.
Yeah.
Him to get shuffled back, into the position he was at. He ran maybe arguably as good of a race as anybody Frosted did, but he had no pace to close into. John, he still only gets beat 3 lengths. Kudos to Frosted. Kieran McLaughlin really had him on his A game. An awesome performance there that unfortunately gets him off the board in the Derby because of the pace scenario and the fact that it's such a large field, he could not get navigated through traffic in time to close that gap in time to make his run to have a chance in here. All the tactical horses had a major advantage when we saw Stanford fall out of the race, saw Ocho Ocho not go the lead. It became a tactical race between horses that had some speed in here. The 3 up front with Firing Line, Dortmund, and obviously your winner, American Pharaoh.
Well, we'll talk about the Preakness more next week, but let's talk about this Belmont prep that's happening this weekend. There's a horse in here that you've been telling me about 2 weeks off. He's a horse that you think is doing pretty well coming into this race. He's just an allowance winner at this point, but you think he's a pretty good colt.
I tell you what, I was there on Bluegrass Day, and essentially the whole Keeneland meet I was out there. He was the best, and we saw a lot of good performances by 3-year-olds at Keeneland this meet, whether it was in stakes or allowance company. 2 weeks, there wasn't a better 3-year-old that I saw at the Keeneland meet than 2 weeks off, and that includes Carpe Diem. I was just really impressed with this colt and the way he was able to win entry-level allowance race in his seasonal debut. They think he's going to be better around 2 turns here. So when I look at this Peter Pan Stakes, I sort of see the next wave of 3-year-olds. Bob Baffert has an interesting horse on the rail. Wolfman Rocket broke his maiden in a stakes race on the undercard of the Arkansas Derby and is bred to run all day. Clearly wanted to get around 2 turns. Now he gets to go a mile and 1/8. But 2 weeks off, I loved his talent at Keeneland, John. I'm very excited to see this colt run. What's interesting is I think Wolfman Rocket may be better bred for the 1.5 Belmont distance, say if he were to run well here and they wanted to bring him back in the Belmont Stakes. 2 weeks off, though, looks like a legit 2-turn colt with a lot of quality. Very anxious to see these 2 run on Saturday, and I really like the upside on 2 weeks off.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. This is the time now. You got the Derby winner. Now we got to see what happens, leading into the Preakness and see if we had a Triple Crown, a potential Triple Crown horse going on the line in the Belmont. It's going to be interesting to see. Congratulations to the Zayats. A well-deserved victory there in the Kentucky Derby. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll give you more information on the Preakness Stakes.